You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, in this week's Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast, I talked to Jenny Williams from Williams Vet Physio in the UK. Now, online Pet Health members, you will know Jenny as she is one of our lecturers and is in fact starting our very first equine webinar series tonight. And she is joined by Robin Crichton, who's a veterinarian, and they will be discussing front and hind limb pathologies and rehabilitation. So it's kindly sponsored by Response System, the series. So if you're not registered for this, it's not too late. It is 4 webinars, 1 week apart, and I really love these webinar series because it's 4 hours of learning, and I feel you can really get a good grasp on the topic that's being discussed in this time. It's a little bit like doing an online course. Afterwards, you get this, I got this feeling. So if you're listening to the podcast after the fact, don't worry. You will be able to access all our live webinars. They get loaded onto our members portal as recordings. So if you've missed any of the series, don't worry, you can catch up on the ones that you've missed out. So before I head over to the interview, a quick word from our sponsors. So Pulse Vet is the global leader in veterinary shockwave technology, and they manufacture the ProPulse and Versatron family of products. Now, for those of you that don't know what shockwave therapy is, it's a non-invasive, high-energy sound wave therapy that can be used on both large and small animals to treat multiple soft tissue and musculoskeletal conditions. With over 20 years of clinical research, Pulse Vet is used by top veterinarians and veterinary rehabilitation therapists to improve the quality and speed of healing, to relieve pain, stimulate bone and tissue growth, and improve the mobility for their patients. So for more information, you can go to pulsevet.com. PulseVet will also have a virtual exhibit at the Vet Rehab Summit, and come and meet them. The whole PulseVet team will be there at our online veterinary rehabilitation conference in November on the 14th. So a little bit more about Jenny. She's a lecturer and she also practices on small animals and equines. We had a really great chat about juggling family as well as all the different aspects of veterinary rehabilitation that she is involved in. So here's my interview. Hey Jenny, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi Meg, thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our podcast today.
Jenny, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and how you got into the field of vet rehab?
Okay, so for me, it's always been an ambition of mine to be a physio from a young age, and that really come from the fact that I had competition horses and we used to have physios out to our horses and seeing how it really, really helped performance. So initially I started down the traditional path where you study human physio first. I'd done the first year of human physio and decided it wasn't the right path for me and decided to transfer to do an equine degree. So I did an equine degree. Right choice for me, graduated with first class honours, got lots of long life friends from there, and then went on to do a postgrad in veterinary physiotherapy. So that was how I qualified, and then I'm sure during the podcast we'll talk a little bit more about what I'm doing now and things. So that's a little bit about how I qualified.
So are you still horse riding?
Yeah, so still ride. I don't have my own horse anymore. I'm a new mum, so I've got a 1-year-old little boy, so I don't actually have my own horse anymore. Something I'd love one day, but unless we get more hours in the day, I can't see that possible for quite a while.
So your story is quite similar to mine. So I was a rider when I was younger, and I just wanted to do everything equine. But you're actually not only doing equine now, aren't you? You're doing some hydrotherapy with canines too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a canine physio as well, so I am mixed practice. Yeah. And it's so funny that you should say that because I was the exact same. I just wanted to work with horses, with competition horses. And I thought, oh, I want to be an equine physio. And that's what I used to say, but that course doesn't actually exist here. So it was vet physio. So I enrolled on the course quite naively thinking, oh, you know, I'll dabble with dogs during the course, but I'm only going to work with horses. And during studying, I just loved the variety that come with the canine practice. There's so many like real physio rehab techniques we can use, like wobble cushions. You know, I love the hydro part, which is a lot more accessible for the dogs than the horses. And I just loved working with dogs because I've always owned dogs. I just didn't see that as a career really. So yeah, I work with dogs and horses now, 50-50 I'd say in terms of physio, and then I do a canine hydro clinic as well, which is pool and water treadmill.
Yeah, I think the thing is with horses, you can only see a certain amount of cases, whereas with the small animals, you can see more cases in a shorter space of time. So I think your learning curve also is a little bit steeper, when you're doing and you're in at a practice. So obviously, if you're mobile, you're traveling, and then you have that time. If you're doing canine and you're mobile, but if you're in a practice and you can see so many more cases than you could if you were an equine. So I mean, I was exactly the same. So I went to obviously the veterinary route, and I was going to be an equine vet. That was it. I was actually irritated when we had to do any small animal rotations, because I actually thought to myself, this is like such a waste of my time because I'm not even going to be treating them. And I remember I didn't learn anything about rabbits or fish or birds. There wasn't, we could either choose between wildlife or like the small furries and like birds and rabbits. And I remember even thinking, I'm not even going to do that. I'll do wildlife because they're closer to horses, So, and then I ended up being a small animal vet and having to treat rabbits and small furries and birds and fish. So yeah.
Oh,
Awesome,
wow.
Jenny. So tell us a little bit now about your life as a vet rehab therapist. So you're juggling a few things.
Yeah, so alongside working as a vet physio and canine hydrotherapist, I'm also a university HE lecturer. So as I said, I've recently had a little boy, so my working pattern has dropped to part-time now. So my current schedule really is 2 days a week as a lecturer, and I only teach equine level 6, which is final year degree, and I only teach on therapy modules as well as dissertation supervision, so supervising final year research projects, because equine is still my passion. I love my equine days, and although I am mixed practice, I am so passionate about horses, and that is, what I absolutely love to do. So level 6 equine is what I teach. And then I have one equine day a week and one canine day a week. And my canine day is a mix of mobile canine physio sessions in people's home, as well as canine sessions in clinic, whether that be physio, land-based, or whether that is pool-based or treadmill-based, so the hydro side. So I'm 2 days therapy, 2 days lecturing. That's how my business is at the moment.
And then you got 1 day left to be a mom.
Yeah, so so obviously 3 days, so 4 days a week working and then 3 days mom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that 1 day, I'm sorry, you're probably getting lectures ready for online pet health. So we've got
at the moment.
Yeah. Actually tonight, Jenny will be lecturing the first of our equine series, which we're really, really excited about. So we'll chat about that a little bit later. So Jenny, the practice where you are doing the canine work, so how did you set that up? So you obviously drive around a little bit and then you have some set times when you're at the practice.
Yeah, exactly. So I have had a few different models. So when I very first qualified, what I done was I contacted all local vet centres, all local vet practices, and I introduced myself and said, this is my qualification. I'd love to meet with you and do a lunch and learn session about what physiotherapy is and how it could help your practice. You could either have it as an inpatient thing or an outpatient referral thing. And I said, and I'd be willing to discuss different models with you about, hiring your facilities, giving you a percentage of earnings, etc., etc. And some vets took me up on that and said, we're just happy to hear about it and how it can help our patients, because ultimately it comes down to the fact that we love animals and want to do the best treatment what we can, and vets are the exact same. So I did previously hire a room in a vet practice, so that was probably about 5 years ago now. But where I'm actually working now, it is a hydro centre, and they actually had a job advertised online for a canine hydrotherapist. And I contacted the person who was recruiting and said, I'm not interested in being a full-time canine hydrotherapist. However, I have a lot of private physio clients who would really benefit from water-based therapy as well. I'd love to combine the water-based side to the land-based treatment. So would you consider me helping set up a physio practice as part of your hydro centre? And the woman loved the idea. So basically, myself and another physio got on board. We run hydro clinics, physio clinics. And yeah, that's how it works for us. And it works so well because it's my patients as well as, they give me hydro patients as well that I do just hydro with. And it's a lovely balance because I've got that facility there where I've not got a huge commitment, that I haven't had to hire a building or spend thousands for a treadmill myself, but I can still do the therapy and provide it to my patients. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have the benefit of having those facilities, but not having to have to create the income always to be able to pay for them. So how does the financial situation work out? So do you give them a percentage, or how does that work?
So basically, we have arranged a set fee per dog, my rate basically per dog. So for example, say the session costs £40, of that they get a percentage and I get a percentage of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it works really well.
Yeah, and it's really great for you because if you're not consulting, let's say you take a week off, then you don't have to pay anything, right? So it's just basically, if you're there and you work, you give them a percentage. If you're not working, then they don't obviously get any income, and you don't too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really good because my colleague, I've got a really good working relationship with her, and she does a lot more in terms of she runs the centre and she does so much there. But because I'm so busy, because I am, an equine practitioner as well, and a huge amount of my caseload is horses, 1 day a week is horses. I obviously have that other side. So if I ever can't fit things in, I can say, oh, can you see my patient this week, or if she's on holiday or if I'm on holiday. So it works really, really well that we've got that flexibility, but can kind of run it ourselves.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that is tricky when you're on your own. When you want to take holiday, let's say you want to take 3 weeks off, then who's going to manage your patients? So it's so nice to have someone. Do you have the same thing with the equine side of things, or are you pretty much on your own on that side?
So I'd say I'm pretty much on my own. However, I would say I've got a good working relationship with other therapists in the area. So some of it might be because I done some training with them when I was a student, or it might be that, we've just come across each other, our paths have crossed even over time. So it might be that, if I can't fit things in because I'm too busy, then I'll say, oh, I've got a patient in this area, can you see them? And then vice versa, or if I'm on holiday. So I think that's so important. And sometimes, because it is self-employed, and well, the majority of rehab work is self-employed, you sometimes can get very protective over, these are my patients and I need to fit everything in. But I find there's enough work for everybody, and it's better to have good working relationships with people and pass work to people if you can't fit it in. Because if you say to a client, I can't see you for 6 weeks, they're going to go to somebody else. So you're better saying, I'm so sorry, I can't fit you in. However, my colleague can. And then they're going to use that colleague for that one session. And then, you can do the follow-up. Or you've done the initial session and then they can do the follow-up, but they then come back to you, as opposed to just looking on Facebook or whatever and finding somebody else who you might not know and might keep that client forever. So I think it's so good to see it that we are colleagues and we're all working together.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Not to be protective, because like you say, there is more than enough work out there. And it's amazing actually, when you build up a relationship and a network with a few therapists, you actually start to realize that you have different interests. So what will happen is, let's say, for example, somebody's like really interested in the dressage horses and they become really good at that, because that's what they're seeing. Then what might happen is you might be the show jumpers, or I'm just giving an example here. And then what happens is, when they get a client and you get a client that's a dressage horse, you'll say, well, actually, I think you should go to my colleague because this is where she specializes. And then you more into the show jumpers and they refer to you. And you get that kind of relationship where, sometimes you'll actually think this client is actually better off with my colleague. And that networking is really, really great. And it's not only just networking with other colleagues that actually do exactly what we do, but we can also network with people that are doing other things. So like, for example, there might be farriers, or there might be a vet that maybe does acupuncture or some homeopathic injections or something like that. So building up those relationships and those networking in your area is so valuable. So it's so great that you use that.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. And as you said, we're doing a series, myself and Robin, who's an equine vet, and we're talking about, during that series, about collaborative practice and how it's so important for the vet to do the diagnosis and the initial treatment, but working alongside a physio, and how that is actually more successful than one of them just working on their own. In that lecture, we do talk about the importance of farriery, the importance of weight management, so seeing a nutritionist, the importance of, saddle fit, and it is so important. And so I also, so as I said, I'm a lecturer, and as part of my role, I do take final year vet physio students out on placement with me. And I always say to them, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and speak to your vet. Your vet should be your number one client in terms of marketing. So, and they say, oh, we don't want to call vets because, vets are scary and we might not use the right terminology, or we don't want to ring them. We'll just send them an email. And I always encourage them, if there's anything you're not sure about or liaising with a case, pick up the phone and speak to a vet. So only last week, I called a vet in our local area who I know quite well, and wanted to speak to her about a multi-limb lameness and an undiagnosed lameness. So various, this owner's been to a few vets for a second opinion, and the case has been referred to me for lower limb lameness, but it's not 100% diagnosed, and it's multi-limb, multifactual. And I phoned her up and said, I know you're not one of the vets on this case, but can I just talk to you through, this is the rehab route that I've done, this is what my plans are, because we don't actually know what's going on. And it was so nice to speak to her. And she was like, at the end of the day, what you're doing is perfect. It's clinical reasoning. You're saying we can work this case and see if it goes worse. If not, we'll rest this case, see if it goes better. And one way we're going to have an answer. And if not, all we can do is refer back and say, we need to investigate further from a diagnosis point of view. But this horse isn't insured, and it's thousands of pounds for an MRI. So that's where we're stuck, because X-ray and ultrasound is only giving us so much information. So it's so important to know that no matter how many years you've been qualified for, have that communication with the vet, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and say, this is what I'm doing. I'm just consulting with you on this case. This is my plan. If it isn't working, we'll be referring it back for further investigation, because you are working together as a team, and ultimately only a vet can diagnose.
That team is so important. When I was doing acupuncture with horses, I had a vet physio and a chiropractor, veterinary chiropractor that I used, and the three of us worked so well together. And I would see the case, and then I'd call the vet physio, and then she would say, okay, you can go back again. And it was amazing. And what I want to say to the listeners out there is that if some of you are thinking that vets are scary, we're not all that scary. And I think it's actually more something that people build up in their minds, because they think that maybe the vets are a little bit unapproachable. And I don't know where this comes from, because if I think about most of my veterinary colleagues, we're all actually really down to earth and easy. And maybe it's from when you're at the stables and the vet's busy and they're in their zone, and maybe that comes across, I don't know, as being a little bit scary and unapproachable. But most of us are really, really friendly. So please pick up the phone and chat with us. And like you say, just working together with them. And the vet will really appreciate it. So the vet will appreciate the phone call. You think that you are, taking up their time. Yes, you are, and you must be respectful of that. But the vet will appreciate that you have contacted them to discuss the case. And you also come across so much better to the owner when you come as a team, instead of coming as one person's opinion and this person's opinion. When you say, okay, I've spoken to your vet, this is the plan. And the owner themselves feel so much more confident about the treatments that you're going to do when you have a plan together with their vet.
Yeah, exactly.
Jenny, let's chat about the equine practice and about the traveling. So obviously that is one of the hassles with being a mobile equine clinic where you have to drive. Is there quite a lot of driving for you, or is everything quite close?
So I'm generally within an hour's radius is what I try to stick to. Obviously traffic dependent and things like that. And since becoming a mum, I have tried to reduce my travel even more. So previously where I may have extended past that, and when I very first qualified as well, I wanted to see everybody and capture every single area. And I was quite unrealistic really. So, I might travel an hour each way for one horse. And yes, you charge mileage, but your mileage is never going to reflect your time when you could have been treating another patient. So as the years have advanced since I've been in practice and since becoming a mum even more, your time is so precious. I've realised that client isn't worth my time. So, no, sorry, that's probably not the right way to word it, but that client, it's too far, it's out of my area, and refer it on to another practitioner. And just been more realistic that set days, I'm in this area on this day, I'm in this area on that day. Unfortunately, that's outside of my mileage zone. I can pass you on to somebody else.
Yeah, because in the end, then, like you say, it's just not worthwhile, because you're wasting so much time not earning any income where you could have actually be treating patients. So and you can never charge the travel time. Like you couldn't say, like, I treat whatever you charge for an hour of treatment. You can't add that onto your mileage. You just can't. So it's a tricky one. So when you're traveling, what do you do with your time? So like one of the things that I found really tricky when I was doing mainly horse work, was that I would spend the whole day just driving. And unfortunately we had, at that time we didn't have podcasts and things like that when I was doing it. So this is like years and years and years ago. So we only just like the cell phones, we didn't have hands-free in the car. I think we could plug it in, but it wasn't very easy to speak. And I can remember just finishing the day and still having to write all my notes, and still having to do all my accounts, and just make sure I invoice people and send all of those, and then all the other appointments, and contact all the people that phone me during that time. So there's always the struggle when you're out for the day and then you come back, and it should normally be sort of time when you can just sit and relax with the family. Do you find that a struggle, or do you have a way in which you can manage all of that?
So actually, I recently listened to one of your lectures, Meg, and I absolutely loved it, and it was on time management. So I've recently become a member of Online Pet Health myself, and it was on the business management tools, I think it's called, business basics, something like that. And it was a lecture on time management, and I absolutely loved it, and it really has made me more productive. So I'm terrible for having to-do lists, and my idea of ticking off a part of my to-do list is writing a new to-do list because I've crossed one thing off it. So I used to have these to-do lists that was pages and pages long and never get around to them because I was trying to do a million things. And the lecture, obviously you'll know because you've done it, but for the purpose of the listeners, it said about time blocking. So instead of just writing a to-do list, you should go and listen to it. It's so good. And it said, you've got a 5-minute task, a 15-minute task, anything more that's half an hour, it needs to be added to your diary as a time blocking actual task. So I've been printing these off weekly and putting 5-minute tasks. And say when I go back to the car, if I'm running a little bit early or whatever before my next client, I can do one of those 5-minute tasks because there's so much we can do on our phones now. I have my accounts on an Excel spreadsheet, so I can actually open that and input the mileage, etc. So that's a 5-minute task that's done for that day. And anything that's half an hour is added to the week. And things like your 15-minute task, I do try to do some of those when I'm driving. If it's, say, calling a vet, I can do that if I've got a half an hour commute or whatever. I can do that during that time. So I am trying to be more productive during those commute times.
It's great. I'm so happy that you watched that training, because I must say, once I implemented that into my life, it made such a difference. And what I really realized is that all the things that I thought I could achieve in one day, I actually couldn't. Because you think that things take a certain amount of time, and they usually take double that amount of time. So I'm so glad that you are using those.
Yeah, I loved it. And the biggest takeaway from me was with regards to emails. You said your email is part of your job is not email. And sometimes I can spend, especially on my university days when I'm lecturing, I can sometimes spend the whole day responding to emails and I don't actually get anything done. And the university doesn't employ me to answer emails. It's just part of my job. So now I have 8:30 till 9 o'clock as emails and then 4:30 till 5 o'clock as emails. And that's it. If it doesn't get answered in those times, it goes on to the next day. And nothing's stopped, nothing's happened.
Yeah.
It means I'm more productive. And it's amazing how that one thing can make such a difference.
Yeah, and also putting those, when you get that automatic message where it flicks when somebody emails, is you actually got to switch that, got to switch that off completely. You never have that, because as soon as you do, it's that curiosity gap. It's there, like you see something, you think, oh, what did that person say? And then you can't help yourself. So I also have those off completely, and I read my emails and then I switch them off until the end of the day. I don't even go on again, unless I'm waiting for something really important from somebody. But yes,
I used to do that all the time. Like you say, open an email with no intention of replying because I didn't have to reply. So I'd read it and then mark it as unread, and then I'd be thinking, I need to reply to that person, So I should have never opened it in the first place, because I spent 5 minutes reading emails that I had no intention of replying to. So yeah, that was really good. So thank you for that.
Sure, yeah. So for the listeners, you never ever open your emails if you do not have time to reply to them. So never just check your email. Like when you're driving or when you're at a shop or something, never click into your email and check it. If you don't have time to reply, don't open it. Otherwise, you're going to have to read it again. You're just wasting your time. Yeah. Awesome, Jenny. Let's move over into the marketing side of things. So are you quite active in marketing on social media? Have you got like a strategy that you work with, or is it something that sort of just happens when it happens?
It's definitely something that happens when it happens with me. I have the best intentions and lots of fabulous ideas, and then I don't actually put them forward. So for me, I very much wanted my business to grow organically because I love lecturing, and for me, I will always be a lecturer and a therapist. So I always want the two to work in harmony together. So I wanted it to grow organically at a pace that I could very much manage. So a lot of my referrals have been through word of mouth, or a vet has been happy with my progress and then they've referred various cases. I have quite a few vets who are actually clients of mine as well. So because I treat their animals, they're happy with those results. They then pass it on to their patients. And it has really just grown organically, which I love. But I would like to be more active with social media. But it is a time thing, you do need to, like you say, time block to have a couple of hours a week doing marketing or social media updates or anything. And some people are so good on there, and I occasionally share a post now and again. So I haven't really done a lot in terms of marketing other than word of mouth. What I would say to new graduates or therapists who are maybe moving to a new area, or somebody who really just wants to give their business more growth, the best thing that I found from an equine perspective was I went to a local show, like grassroots horses, just normal general purpose show, and hired a stall there. And it wasn't very much money at all. I think it was maybe £20 for a donation to the show. And I just spoke to people about the benefits of physio and how it could help their horses, and given some leaflets out. And I have had so many clients come from that, as opposed to spending, hundreds of pounds on magazines or whatever. That worked really well. And from a canine perspective, as I said, I've done lunch and learns. So I contacted the vet practice directly and said, would you and your nurses like a CPD lunch and learn? And spoke about the benefits and how it could help their cases, and had referrals from that. So it's really you just going out there, and doesn't really cost you much money. It's just your time. And I found it really helped.
So the feedback that I get from a lot of the vet rehabbers is that when they need to go and do these lunch and learns, it's so scary for them. And I think you being a lecturer, that really is a lot easier for you because you're a lot more comfortable speaking in front of people. So that's one of the things that people struggle with. I mean, have you, with your students, have you tackled this with them at all?
Yeah, and you are right. Everybody always says, how scary presentations are and standing up and speaking. But the reason you become a physio is or any form of vet rehabber, you know, whether it's a chiropractor, a massage therapist, it's because you are so passionate about that. That is your job, that is your career, that is something you love and you're so passionate about. And you wouldn't have passed and got the qualification unless you were safe and competent to go out and treat animals. So they're not there to assess your presentation skills. They're not giving you a job. It's not an interview. You're literally having an informal chat with them, just saying, hi, this is who I am. This is the benefits of hydrotherapy. This is the benefits of physiotherapy. This is how it can help your patients. And it's just a nice informal chat. So I'd say practice it with colleagues, practice it with family members. And once you've done a few of them, it does get less scary. And people just want to listen to you because you're the expert. It's your business. You know, you're just telling them why you're unique and why they should refer to you rather than Joe Blogs down the road. Because as you said, people are specialists in different areas. So you're just getting that across to them.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Like, they're not actually there to judge how well you can lecture or present. And you just got to be real. Just be real. Be yourself. Be authentic and real, and let them get to know you and show them that passion that you share. So that's great advice. So what do you think the biggest challenges that you have are right now with practice?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like I'm in quite a fortunate position that my business is just growing organically and more to the point where I feel like I couldn't take many more new patients on because I am at, you know, full capacity. But that's because I'm only one day equine, one day canine. If I wanted to grow this full time, it'd be a very different scenario, wouldn't it? So some of the challenges for me are personally a time thing. So I have got new clients contacting me from word of mouth, and my diary's booked up for the next 2 months. So I haven't got any availability in that because I've been quite strict with my working hours now as I've got a little boy. So whereas previously I was available, even though I had set working days, they were just, you know, very, you know, what am I trying to say?
So like you could schedule it any time, right? So because you didn't have a little boy together, so if it was at 6 o'clock at night, you could go and see somebody then, or so your time was a little bit easier to fit in clients.
Yeah, it was very flexible, and I used to use these very loosely. So even though I'd say this is my working day, if a client wasn't available on a Friday and they wanted to see me on a Saturday, I'd say, well, I'm not supposed to be working on Saturday, but I can go out and see one. Or I don't really do Sundays, but you know what, I'll fit them 2 dogs in there because, you know, they're quite local to one another. So sometimes, well, quite regularly, I was working 7 days a week. I'd finish lecturing at 5:30, and then I'd book clients in after work. And I was just always available. So can you come out at 7 p.m. on Tuesday? Yep. Can you come out at 8 a.m. on Saturday? Yep. Whereas I've had to be quite strict with those now. Because of childcare, obviously, with the current situation, what's been going on, nurseries have been closed. So childcare has fell to obviously me and my husband inclusively. So I've had to be quite strict that I can only work set days. And for me, it was to not let my diary run away with me and say to people, I am fully booked now. So my biggest challenge is time, but I appreciate that won't be for everyone. But any working mums out there, I'm sure you know, you're all in the same boat, and time is the issue.
Yeah, and I must say I had exactly the same thing when I had my kids. Just so used to being able to work whenever I wanted. So there was nothing apart from my sport. You know, at the time I was canoeing quite a lot, but you know, work always came first. So if there was a patient that needed to be seen, I saw the patient and I didn't go canoeing. There was no question about it. You know, so and then suddenly I had a child, and the childcare is a big struggle because you're having to rush back for somebody who's about to leave. And you know, so when you have that client and you start going over time a little bit, then you start to panic. And I must say it took a long time for me to get used to setting those boundaries and actually, you know, suddenly realizing, no, I actually can't say yes. You know, so somebody will phone and you're in consult, and normally what will happen is the receptionist would come through and say, there's a dog screaming in pain, it's got neck pain, this vet wants to refer it to you for acupuncture. And then I would just say, yeah, just send it down and I'll fit them in. And then you can't. I found that really hard, I must say. I really, really found it. But you have to set boundaries because of, the personal situations that change.
And I still struggle with that now, for me, it's been very hard to set those boundaries, and I do very much struggle because I want to please everybody. So I always say yes. And sometimes I say yes to things that I really don't have time to be doing this, shouldn't be saying yes to. So like I said previously, sometimes I'd go out and see one dog. So for me, I charge less for dogs than I do for horses. But now, if I had to put my son in childcare, sometimes the cost of childcare could outweigh if I was just seeing one patient. So that is just not financially viable. And at the end of the day, as much as we love it, it is a business and businesses should make money. So from that point of view, I think I'm paying this much for childcare. I need to make sure I'm maximizing that day as much as possible, because you're not going to put your child in nursery and pay, his nursery is like £62 a day. You're not going to put them in and only be doing 1 or 2 clients. You want to maximize those days. And what I've also started doing is having an admin day as part of my business, where I do accounts, where I do vet reports, and make sure I'm very strict with those. It's just a couple of hours every week, and then it's not a big job, and I can do that at home with my son there. So that's really important. Or maximizing my equine days when I'm sat in the car if I'm running a bit early, or if you ever get a cancellation, instead of just going and getting a coffee or something, and if somebody cancelled previously, I'll actually make sure I always have my laptop or iPad with me and actually do some tasks on my 15-minute and 5-minute tasks and get them done and ticked out the way. So I've been very productive. So my mum days are where I can sit at home and watch cartoons and play with building blocks and enjoy that part of being a mum as well, instead of being stressed thinking I've got 10 reports to do, I need to book this, because that's my working day and that's my mum day.
Yeah, that's good. You really do need to separate it. And I also I work from home. So if I've got the kids, it's, before I used to just go work a little bit, go to the hair a little bit. And now I actually say, okay, I'm going to work for this many hours, and then I'm going to go up and do a puzzle with the one daughter, or do something. So I actually say I'm going to do something. So straight after this podcast, I am going to plait hair so that they look like horses. Apparently, that is the request. My kids are dressed in their jodhpurs, and they've got everything, and they want their hair plaited like horses. So Jenny, it's been so wonderful chatting to you, and I am so looking forward to your webinar series. It's our first equine series that we're having. So for those of you that don't know, our equine members will know that it's coming up now. So we do these webinar series. And what I really love about the webinar series is that you really get a handle on a topic, So I love listening to webinars, and a webinar will be 1 hour and it gives you a little bit of information. But when we have a series, what we do is we have 4 webinars 1 week apart, and the content is all very linked. So which are your lectures? Are you talking about the rehab side of things? Because we're doing front limb pathology, and then the rehab of the front limbs, and then hind limb pathology, and then the hind limb rehab. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So Robin is one of my colleagues. So we used to lecture together at Bishop Burton College, and Robin's an equine vet. So she's going to be talking about the pathologies and what's actually going on and vet treatment. And then I'm talking about the rehab. And when we worked together, we used to love talking about cases together. And it's just so brilliant that we can do this on a larger platform and talk about this collaborative practice.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And what I love about it is afterwards, when you watch a series, everything sort of just comes together, doesn't it? Because you've just got both those different views, and it's going to be awesome. So looking forward to it, Jenny.
Yeah, so we're really excited. Yeah, so thanks for having me. So really looking forward to it. So hopefully everyone enjoys it.
Thank you for all your advice and all the chats today. It's been awesome.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks very much.
Cheers, Jenny.
Bye.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about veterinary rehabilitation. For more information about continuing education for vet rehab therapists that you can do online, you can go to onlinepethealth.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and of course thank our sponsors, Pulse Vet. We thank them for their commitment to their mission to improve the quality of life of the animals animals that we all love by developing, validating, and providing advanced shockwave therapy at the highest level of support and service. Remember, you can reach them at pulsevet.com or info@pulsevet.com. See you all next week.